You're listening to Beauty and Beyond Playbook. I'm your host, Mitzi Hernandez. Welcome back. If this is your first time, then welcome to Beauty and Beyond Playbook. Today we are talking all about money. And I'm not even going to say all because money is so convoluted and so complicated. Can we really talk all about money in one podcast episode? No. But today's episode is definitely about money. And I want to talk about something that my mentee is experiencing and something that I've experienced, and I'm sure most people who did not grow up with a lot of money experience, and that is money shame. Right now, I'm mentoring a girl who has had a very successful lash, brow, and tanning business for 6 years. And for some reason, she is really slow right now. Or she was when we first started working together. She's on the up and up now. And when we talk about money, she gets stuck on what did I do wrong? How can I fix it so that it never happens again? What if it happens again? And it's coming out through her perfectionism, but because she can't be perfect in business like she's used to making a lot of money, she's used to being booked up, because she can't be that quote unquote perfect, then it is bubbling up in shame that's just going with her all day, right? And even though when we first started working together, she was slow, but now she's had a lot of new people book. She's had a lot of people try her other services. So she's doing really well. Her brain, her mind, her thoughts are not catching up, and they're still stuck in the past of this happened. Can it happen again? And if it happens again, what does that mean? And I myself will struggle with shame around money when something I did causes money to stop coming in, if that makes any sense. So I've shared that when I first started my mentoring business, I was making upwards to $16,000 a month doing strictly lashes. Obviously, I was lashing a ton of people. I was working 5 days a week, 8 to 12 hours, nonstop without breaks. And then when I took up mentoring, of course, that slowed down because I had to focus on mentoring, not focus on lashing. And I would find that when I wasn't making that same amount of money, I would shame myself. And I would be like, why did I stop lashing? Why did I want something different? Like, my life was really good lashing. What made you believe that you could be a mentor? And it's all shame-based thoughts, right? Because like I just stated in this episode, by her working with me, she has been able to get more clients, right? And we've only been working together, I think, a month. So clearly I'm a good mentor. I know what I'm doing, but that doesn't stop those thoughts from coming in. And I share this because if your thoughts do the same thing, if your thoughts go to blaming you, if your thoughts are not nice, if your thoughts are not kind, if your thoughts blame other people when it comes to money, if you become very dysregulated around money, it's fucking normal. It's normal also when you come from not being wealthy, right? I find wealthy people don't have this kind of thoughts. Even when they're beginning to go broke, they do not have thoughts like people that grew up without a lot of money. They tend to have those thoughts. And if your parents, even if you grew up in an environment where y'all had like a very middle class or upper middle class life, but your parents were constantly worried about money and you heard it and they like threw it on you, it's going to show up in your life. So it's very normal. The reason I'm saying something so simple as it's very normal is because I don't want you to add shame to what you already feel. I don't want you to add more shame and more guilt and more thoughts when like naturally your body's already doing that. And I wouldn't even say your body, but I would just say you're feeling feelings that trigger certain thoughts that have always lived within you. And you're just trying to rework that. You're just trying to rewire all of that. That is all that's happening. So it's completely normal. Now let's talk about why it becomes a thing and how we can fix it. If you live in the United States, most of my listenership is in the United States. I have a couple of countries that listen to my podcast that's outside, obviously, of the United States. But for the most part, most of my listeners are in the United States. So if you are in the United States, you live in a capitalist country, right? You live in a country that looks at profit above anything else. And what that means is you live in a country that cares more about money. They care more about the money you produce. They care more about your social status. And social status usually, or I would say 99.999% comes with the amount of money you have, right? Look at Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, what's his name? Bill Gates. Like anybody who's a billionaire, it's going to create something. Like they are viewed in a certain light, whether you like them, whether you believe billionaires should exist or not, it is something that's celebrated, right? Like when Kanye West became the first, I think he was the richest black man in America or something like that. It's celebrated, right? You've learned how to create and keep a large amount of wealth, right? Anytime you go from poor to middle class, that's celebrated. When you go from middle class to upper middle class, from upper middle class to wealthy, right? Like a very high earner, all of that is celebrated. And while I don't think it's wrong that it's celebrated in any shape, way, or form, it can backfire when you are not the one moving on up. It can backfire when you are trying your hardest and it's still not working out for you, right? Because then what this country tells you is you did this. Like you are not wealthy because of your own personal flaws. And one of the issues that I have with manifestation girlies, which again, I have said many times in my podcast, if you listen to it, I 100% believe in energy and manifestation and all that stuff. But what happens when you join manifestation groups or you listen to manifestation YouTube or podcast or something, they fail to say something to you, which is your thoughts alone are not the ones that are making you money. Point blank, period. They just are not. You have to take some sort of action. And if you are balls deep in manifestation and you do not have the money you want, it can happen that you start thinking, what am I doing wrong? What did I do wrong? Am I thinking negative thoughts? Like you start over analyzing, which again, I always like to say, like, it's like the snake eating its own tail. As you're over analyzing to fix the money problem that you currently have, you are triggering your perfectionism. And when your perfectionism is touched and it has to be addressed and it comes to the surface, that's where a lot of the shame is going to come up, because you're not perfect, because you never will be, because inherently as humans, we are flawed. And so it's very, very silly to assume that you will ever be perfect. You'll never be perfect with money. You'll never be, it doesn't matter how rich you get. Listen to me when I say this. It doesn't matter how wealthy you become. You will never be perfect with money because you are an imperfect being. And part of being an entrepreneur is riding the waves of up and down, highs and lows, right? Look at the big companies. They go bankrupt all the time. Why? Because things are flawed. Look at our president. Trump has filed for bankruptcy quite a few times. Why? Because things are flawed. Not because anything's inherently wrong with the person. It's just the way that the system is set up. It's just the way that money is set up. Nothing is ever stable. I know we're talking about money, but like I stated, money is so convoluted and there's so much in it. Money has a lot of ups and downs, just like life. Nothing will ever be stable. The only thing you can count on as a human living on earth and in the United States is that change is the only constant thing. Things will constantly change. The environment's going to change. Your friends are going to change. Your partner's going to change. You're going to change. The economy's going to change. Prices are going to change. Trends are going to change. Fashion is going to change. The way they build cars is going to change. Everything is constantly evolving. And again, we live in a country that is constantly seeking to be the first country to do something that makes money. We're known for breaking things into the economy, into the marketplace that is not known in other places, right? Like think of Amazon. Amazon started here. So all those kind of things. So of course, that is why we have such a fucking hustle mentality in this world. And by no fucking means am I saying that you shouldn't hustle. Am I saying that you should just sit back like the manifestations girly say and just sit back and think positive thoughts? I think it's a mix of keeping your emotions in check, feeling those emotions, and then taking action to go achieve the tax bracket that you want to live in. However, it should never come with shame. And I'm someone who doesn't like to should you or should myself. I think shoulding is not a great way to talk to people because it will trigger shame. And a lot of us live with shame. Trust and believe. Most of us, especially if you grew up poor, especially if you're an immigrant, especially if you're a woman, you live with shame because of the messages that society sends you. So I don't want to should you, but there is no reason you should ever be living with shame and operating from shame. Shame, I truly believe in my heart, shame and guilt are unnecessary emotions that you do not need to indulge in. Now, I have had this conversation with many people, including my therapist. I think guilt and shame are unnecessary emotions. They are things you should not have to take on as a human. Because life, I've always said this, life is already fucking hard. The last thing we need is guilt and shame digging its claws into us, making it harder. I have heard people say that there's healthy shame and that there's unhealthy shame. All shame is bad. All shame is bad. At no point should you have to feel shame or guilt to be a good human. They are unnecessary emotions. When you feel guilt or shame, it is so deeply rooted and it's going to make you act out of character. Same with fear. I talked about fear in my podcast episode about the election. So I think it's called like election mindset shift. At no point should you feel those emotions. If you sense yourself feeling those emotions, if you know you feel those on the regular, I will tell you, you want to work on deconstructing the thoughts, the habits, and the beliefs that have allowed you to feel that for a long time. And I have felt that for a long time, right? I have felt shame and guilt for silly stuff, right? Like recently I did a podcast episode and it seemed like the girl got annoyed with me. And when I got off, I felt so much guilt. I was like, did I say something I shouldn't have said? Did I upset her? And I caught myself and I was like, wait, I'm feeling guilt when I didn't do anything wrong on purpose. I did not purposely do anything on that interview to feel the feelings that I was feeling. But I was assuming that because the person seemed like they were upset, I did something wrong. And so for, I want to say about 4 hours, I walked around with guilt, like I did something wrong. And I had to talk myself down. And I had to talk to a friend who's a therapist. And with both of those things, I was able to completely get rid of that. So will it pop up in your life? Will guilt and shame pop up in your life? Of course the fuck it will. Of course it will. You're human. But is it a constant state that you should be in? Fuck no. Also, with social media, we are constantly trying to outdo each other. I hear this from my clients all the time. Like, oh, I have such a shopping problem, but it wouldn't be a problem if it wasn't for Instagram. Every time I'm on Instagram, I feel like there's something I need to buy. I tend to spend a lot of my time on TikTok, and I find that that is all TikTok has become. TikTok is like this big ass commercial for you to just buy shit over and over and over. Thankfully, I have never fallen down that rabbit hole. That or like Shein or Alibaba or anything like that, because everything is so cheap. That's when people begin to like go crazy. But that was just a side note. What I'm trying to say is social media triggers our spending habits a lot, right? Which can lead to so much shame because, like, imagine that you did fall down the rabbit hole of Shein. And I think that's how you say it, or that's how I say it. And you bought a bunch of shit, but even though everything was cheap and you got a lot, you still didn't have the money to spend on it. So then when it comes in, you're excited, but then when you see you don't have enough money for your bills or for something important like your car broke down, then you feel a lot of shame, right? Money is just so convoluted that I cannot like cover every single piece that I want to cover. But I will tell you what I am teaching my mentee so that she no longer feels that way. First and foremost, you want to just acknowledge that it's happening. If we don't realize it's happening, we cannot fix it. If we don't realize it's happening, we cannot fix it. Awareness is key. Now that you are aware, the way to make sure that you are as aware as possible about your money stories and your money shame is to do what? I know y'all, if y'all been listening for a while, you know what I'm going to say. Come on. To journal. You're going to want to journal. When you journal, just brain dump. Anything that has to do with money, shame, guilt, embarrassment, anything like that, jot that shit down. Jot it down, jot it down, jot it down. You being aware of all these stories will allow you to break free from them. So that's the number one thing. Then the second thing is when you are triggered, whether it's when you're paying bills or you want to buy something cool or something expensive and you can't afford it. So you're trying to figure out, should I put it on a credit card? Should I go without it? I want you to, again, become aware of the thoughts and the feelings coming to you. Sit with them as long as possibly. And what I mean by sit with them, because some people are like, what the fuck does that mean? That means if you are able to take a step away, let's say that you're at home, you're on your phone, you're about to check out, and you see that you cannot afford something, then put the phone down. Don't scroll, because what happens is a lot of the times we feel these feelings, we have this thoughts, and we numb ourselves with doom scrolling instead of just breathing and letting the thoughts exist in our head without us believing them. Thoughts are simply thoughts. They are streams of consciousness. They are not facts. They will never be facts. If our thoughts were facts, if the way that the manifestation girlies say, if you think positive, positive things happen, and if you think negative, negative things happen, if that is 100% true, imagine the most wildest shit that would constantly be popping up in our life and in our brain that would create a certain reality. Thoughts are not facts. Thoughts are just an experience that we individually have with ourselves. So watch them. Pay attention to your body. Do you feel like constantly picking up the phone? Are you constantly like, fuck, I want to pick up this phone. Fuck, I want to pick up this phone. I want to scroll. I don't like this feeling. I remember at the height of my money anxiety, I felt like I was going to combust. Like I was just going to turn into flames, or like flames were going to come out of me. That's how uncomfortable that feeling was. Pay attention to that. You can deal with that. You will not die. I promise you, you will not die. Just pay attention to it. If it gets too uncomfortable, walk away from it. Pick up your phone, talk to a friend, go back to what you were doing. But if you think you can handle it, push through. Once you have done that, those thoughts and those feelings will literally disappear. They will dissipate. And from that clear mindset that you're now in, because think about it, this energy lived within you. Just by giving this energy attention, and by energy, I mean the feelings in your body and the thoughts that are in your brain. Just by giving it attention, it goes away. So you are left open and hollow. So if you are open and hollow, what happens? Then amazing ideas can blossom, because fear, shame, and guilt has now been thrown to the wayside, and now creativity, joy, and open-mindedness will fill that hole. And from that point of view, then decide, do you still want to put this on a credit card? The answer may be yes. And you may feel okay with it at that point. The answer may be no, and you will exit. And you will see that it's not about how much money you have, but about how you handle the feelings in your body. And once those feelings in your body are handled, then you make clear, deep, aligned decisions that will help you with your radical self-trust. And the more you do it, the higher your trust will grow. And the higher your trust will grow, the more confident you are. And the more confident you are, the more likely you are to go after certain opportunities in your business that you normally wouldn't. Bam! Oof! Doesn't that shit feel and sound amazing? Of course it does. But you're going to have to do the dirty work before that beautiful ending. Okay? The only way out is through. I don't know if you've heard this before. The only way out is through. Please listen to me when I say this. I have tried going over the feeling, under the feeling, around the feeling. I've tried to numb the feeling with substances, with dating, with material things, with, I don't even know. I can tell you a million things I've tried. I used to have quite the wild life when I was in my 20s, and I tried it. And when I came back up for air, that shit still lived in my body. If anything, it lived in my body 10 times worse. And now oh my God, now my life has changed so much. And this is making me so emotional because I am nowhere near my goal financially. I am nowhere near where I want to be, but that fear, that anxiety that played in my head over and over and over and dysregulated and made me grumpy towards my family members and the people I was dating and my son, and sometimes led to heavy bouts of depression, that part is gone. That is gone. Do I still deal with money anxiety? Of course, I'm human. I'm always going to be imperfect. But is it as strong? No. No. And it has helped so much with my self-trust. And I'm crying because if you could feel how amazing it feels to drop that shame and that guilt and that load, it's like I'm a whole different person. But the only way I was able to get here is through going through the ugly shit, sitting in my feelings, feeling them, eradicating the thoughts, not believing the thoughts, knowing that I could do something different with my life, and that the thoughts were just simply thoughts. They were not based in fact. They were not proper fortune tellers. That completely changed my world. And I cried because it's like, it feels amazing that I can say I did that. And if I can do it, so can you. And if I can feel this freedom that I once didn't have, know that you can too. But the only way out is through. If you enjoyed this podcast episode, make sure to leave me a review. Make sure to DM me. Make sure to just share it with whoever you think this would be helpful for. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for supporting me. You will hear from me in the next episode.